Hiya, and welcome back to Philosophy, the podcast where I talk about why we feel the way we do while I'm painting. Today, I am continuing my painting of a man and a woman kissing. I think I'm going to organise this podcast according to seasons, where every painting is a season, and this is, well, still season one. So I should probably be working on this lady's forehead so that, when I paint, I'm not kind of placing my hand on wet paint, but I really just want to do the jaw area for some reason, so I think I'm actually going to do the jaw instead and skip the forehead for now and be not too proper with this, so apologies for that. But yeah, the topic that I wanted to talk about today is something that I've kind of been obsessing over and quite fascinated with for the last few months, and that is the view that I am actually a parent to myself in a way, but I'm a terrible parent to myself, and that's perhaps why I might not be as happy as I could be. So that's the concept. I'm going to go through it in some level of detail today, and yeah, let's talk about this if this makes any sort of sense. So basically, the place that this idea came from was, I think I was kind of made aware a bit of the voice that I have in my head. I don't think about this voice very often. This is kind of like my conscious self, basically. So the part of me that I have conversations with, or the part of me that decides what to do or thinks, the thinking part of me, the part that comes up with the words before I say them, or, the part that I have conversations with in bed or in the shower, that voice. And that voice is just not very kind. And this is something that took me, I guess, 25 years to realize that I have a very, very terrible voice in my mind. And that's quite sad, I think, especially because with this new framework that I've been using, I think that voice in my head is also kind of like a parent to me. So what I mean by this, for example, is that there is a part of me that makes me do things, that kind of organizes my day, that decides what I eat, that decides when I need to stop eating, that kind of decides when I sleep, when I wake up, basically everything that I do, how I perform in these tasks, how I feel about myself. So all of those things are done by a voice in my head, which is myself, basically. But in a way, it is kind of parenting me, because in the same way that a parent would kind of organize a child's life and organize what they're to do and kind of give them feedback on all these things, that's the same role that voice in my head has. And as far as a parent goes, when it comes to myself, my voice in my head would be a very short-tempered, overbearing, aggressive, angry, displeased, kind of never satisfied, just condescending, terrible parent. And it took me 25 years to realize that. It took me 25 years to realize that there is nothing kind or accepting or non-abusive about the way that I speak to myself. And that was just quite sad and unacceptable for me. And I think that's definitely something that I've been starting to work on. And something that prompted this even more the other day was that I went on a walk and a hike, actually. So I went on a hike with my flatmates, and as I was walking, I was in the beginning of the hike, and I was walking in one direction. There was this family walking in my direction, and I saw them from like quite a bit far, and I realized, oh no, I was like in my head, oh, this poor lady, because there was a mum and her two sons and her husband, and the younger of the two sons was something like 4 or 5 years old maximum, and he was just not happy. He was like on a brink of a tantrum. He wasn't fully having a tantrum, but he was on a brink of a tantrum. He was starting to refuse to walk and just crying and very, very unhappy. And I saw this lady and I was like, oh, bless her, because we were just in the middle of nowhere. There was no chance that there was anything to be done. I'm sure that he just was fed up and wanted to go home, but like that couldn't be done. In that situation, they would probably have to walk back to the car park to get somewhere. So I saw this lady and I thought, oh no, oh, what a nightmare. And as they were crossing us, it was honestly, this whole thing happened in 5 seconds, but as they were crossing us, I heard her say to her son very clearly, okay, honey, what would make the situation better for you? And I passed. At that point, none of us were lingering, so I have no idea what the son said and what the response to this was. But as I walked away, I was shocked. I was so shocked. That really, really hit me. I spent time thinking about this and I was absolutely speechless as to what she'd said, because that was such a beautiful thing to say. That was so beautiful. In all my experiences with like children, either in my life or in people that I've witnessed, when they are throwing a tantrum, or if that situation were to happen, which happens very often, I think, with kids, the usual reaction is, shut up right now, like stop talking, you're embarrassing me, please be quiet. Or it's something along the lines of, if you don't be quiet right now, you are not coming out with us next time. Or, you know what, it is not your fault for doing this, it is my fault for bringing you are never, coming out with us again. Or, you know what, if you don't want to move, that's fine, just stay here, I'm going to leave now with your dad and you can stay here in the forest all on your own. And obviously the child will follow. So it's usually that sort of a thing that parents say, and it was never that sort of calm, loving, tender approach to what happened. And this child was not only loved in that moment, but they were made to think. This lady said, okay, this is she acknowledged this was a bad situation and said, what would make this better for you? So she put the whole responsibility of improving that situation back on him. She was there willing to help, and she made him think. And I'm sure that he would probably slightly stop crying at that moment, because you can't scream out loud and also think very well at the same time. So I'm sure that would have quieted him up for a moment, and it would have made this 5-year-old think. And I'm sure that he would either have realized that, okay, I want to go to the car right now, but we need to walk to the car, so there's nothing that can be done there. And I'm sure that he would have thought that, oh, I don't know, my shoes are a bit too tight, can you loosen them up a bit? Or I'm very, very hot, can you take my coat off? Or I'm very thirsty, can I have some water? So it could have been something small that would have actually made the experience slightly better for him and made him feel better. But most importantly, it would have been, he was empowered to make that choice on his own and think about his life by himself and think about the situation by himself. And he was just loved, supported, and respected in that moment. And I very rarely have found myself in a similar situation. And this really, really got me thinking about the relationship that parents have with their children. But beyond that, I don't have kids, so this is not something that in that way I can start to apply to my own life. But this kind of fed into this thought that I've been having recently of, what about myself? What about myself? In the ways that I am a parent to myself, how do I talk to myself? And what are the cases that I would be so kind and understanding? And there was really not a lot. When I am kind of feeling like that boy, as though I can't do this anymore, I just want to stop, I don't want to study anymore, I don't want to work anymore, I don't want to work out anymore, I just want to do nothing. And those cases are quite rare, but when they are there, I think my reaction is usually, well, Elizabeth, like, stop it. Stop being so lazy. Why are you so terrible? Why are you so lazy? If you just do this right now, whatever, just get some ice cream later and you'll feel better. Or I'll think that if you don't do this now, then you're not going to go out with your friends this weekend, and therefore just get this thing finished. So as far as parenting goes, I'm just not a good parent. I'm a bad parent. I'm a very, very bad parent to myself. And I was wondering that I should change that. And I really, really do want to kind of change my self-talk and change the way that I approach life with myself and be a bit more like that mum. And when I'm feeling kind of displeased and unhappy, instead of thinking, okay, Elizabeth, shut up, I'm done with you being such a lazy person, just get back to work. Or this is how you always think and you never get anything done, and this is exactly why you don't have all these things that you want, because of this sort of thought and this sort of behaviour. Or you're not going to get, a reward for this, or just all these terrible, nasty things that I do say to myself to get myself to get things done. What if I would rather replace that with what she said, and thinking, okay, I don't feel like doing this right now, or I'm not enjoying this thing that I made myself do. That's a valid feeling. That's absolutely fine. What can I do to make this better? And how much healthier and more productive would that be? What if I kind of empowered myself instead of controlled myself so harshly, as though I can't be trusted? Because it is still me. It's so ridiculous because it is the same person, but it feels as though I don't trust myself, or I don't feel like doing something. Why do I not trust myself to think that that's perhaps the best decision? Why do I have this higher thinking that must make all the decisions for me and be so constantly displeased and unhappy? I don't understand why I've built my life in a way that is the case. And yeah, that's kind of what I've been thinking recently, basically. And I think based on this, I've kind of gone in deep because I've been starting to read like parenting books, and I'm thinking about that. Okay, I've kind of internalized the worst version of my parents in my mind. That is my voice. My own voice in my mind is the worst version of my mom. Why is that the case? Can we neutralize that a bit? Can we make it the best version of my mom? Can we make it the best version of myself? Can we make it the best thing that it basically can be? So that's kind of what I've been working on. But in this book about parenting, I just love this phrase in that we should treat children as valuable in their own right, rather than treat them as the adults that they will become. And I think that that's the same thing that I should apply to myself, because I feel like even in the short term and the long term, I treat myself more as I will only have value once these things are done. So even thinking that, I will be valuable once I publish this thing, once I do this thing, once I finish this thing, once I achieve this diploma, once I get this result, then I am valuable. And also thinking perhaps that even by the end of the day, everything that I do every day is kind of with that drive of, in a way, I don't consciously think of this, of course, but in a way I act as though I will only be valuable and okay once I get all of these things done, and then I can have that mental peace at the end of the day, rather than thinking, even at the very start, from the moment that I wake up when I've literally done nothing, I have value and I'm to be trusted and I am okay, and I don't need to go through all of these hoops to kind of convince myself that is the case. And just in the same way as we should treat children as though they have value as children, rather than the potential adults that they will become, in the same way I should treat myself as though I have value from the moment I wake up in the morning, as though I have value before I have a medical diploma, as though I have value before I've achieved a certain amount of money, or a certain amount of experience, or a certain amount of work, that I have value from the very start and I am to be trusted, because it's as though I wait to finish something. It's as though, like, let's say, for example, I'm not going to go to sleep or I'm not going to rest until I finish this project. And if it's a kind of deadline that I have self-imposed on myself, if it's kind of, a deadline that is artificial, that is not there based on anything else, it's though I say that the Elizabeth, before she's finished this project, is not to be trusted, because that's the Elizabeth that perhaps wants to stop. That's the Elizabeth that perhaps wants to do anything else. And that Elizabeth is lower than. That Elizabeth is not allowed to make decisions. The Elizabeth that is to be trusted, the Elizabeth that has value, is the Elizabeth who has finished this project, because then she can have the she will have earned this kind of respect of mine to allow her to make the decision to stop or continue or to do something else, or what to do next. And I feel as though I'm just postponing this decision making to an older, more mature, more having had more achievements version of myself, which I just think is absolutely ridiculous. It's like a parent saying, you can only decide what you want to do when you're 18 and you move out. You can't decide what you want to do right now, which obviously for some things, listen to your parents if you're under 18, obviously. But for some smaller things, like, to me, it usually is the small decisions that I'm still being very kind of disrespectful and untrusting to myself, that I just think is absolutely ridiculous. So yeah, I'm not sure if all of this made any sort of sense. I realize this is a framework that I haven't actually seen anywhere, so therefore maybe there's a reason that it doesn't make sense to anyone else. But honestly, it's been making so much sense to me, that viewing myself kind of in this way, and yeah, I just think it's been absolutely kind of life-changing, and something that I might actually, which is tangentially related to this, but I might actually do a kind of separate thing in its own right, is kind of unhappiness, because as the terrible parent that I am, I very often let myself sit with unhappiness or punish myself in general, and that can be small things like not allowing myself to read the book that I want, but rather reading a more like valuable educational book because I haven't worked enough in the day, so I need to kind of get rid of some of the guilt of being not as hardworking or not as achieving or haven't done as much as I was supposed to do. So sometimes I'll punish myself in that way, and I think I let myself sit with unhappiness a lot, and as a sort of way to make myself learn. And there's this phrase that I absolutely love, which says that people don't get better at coping with unhappiness because they were deliberately made to be unhappy. Actually having kind of healthy standards and examples of self-love and compassion are a much better formula for coping with the difficulties of life. So I think that if I was more compassionate and more self-loving in general, that would result in me being a stronger, happier and healthier version. And even that would make me better at coping with difficulties rather than my current view or the current assumption under which I work, which is not conscious, but that kind of that sort of suffering is good for me because it will make me stronger and it will make me more capable to deal with things in life. I think that's just like a terrible way to view the world, and I definitely have a lot of evidence towards this being a terrible way to view the world, because I think all of my suffering in life has not helped me in any shape or form. But I think it is a kind of a semi-introduction into this view of viewing yourself as a parent and a child at the same time. And I think that's something that if I want to leave the listeners, if I want to leave you all with something from this podcast, it is that of asking yourself if that makes sense. Like, can you relate to this at all? This sort of parental view, and if you can, then what sort of parent are you to yourself? Is it loving? Is it compassionate? Is it aggressive? Is it abusive? Is it are you perhaps too overbearing or too controlling, or too much of a kind of perfectionist parent? So what sort of parent would you be to yourself if you could see things that way? And does that make you want to change things a bit? I think the easiest way to kind of work my way out of this is thinking of, if I were actually a child, how would I feel? And that would absolutely be unacceptable. But I am certain that I would never treat a child the way that I treat myself. I would never put, even if I had an adult child, if I had my sister, for example, said that, hey, you know what, can you just control my life for a week or a day? I would never be as harsh as I am with myself. I would give so much more positive feedback. I would give so much more support. I would never have such high standards for any other human being. I would never kind of gloss over wins faster, or just in the way that I do in my own life. I think I would be so different if I were someone else's parent. And if that is the case for you, then why? Why do you do that? Why are we like this? And how can we change that? And I think having examples of good parents around us, especially if, for example, we don't have that personal memory from our own life, I think that's potentially why I'm just going through these parenting books now and kind of seeing, okay, what makes a good parent? And I think if I can sort of internalize some of that view and internalize some of that way of approaching life and approaching the world, then I think my self-talk and the voice in my head will be so much better for it. Because I do wonder what it must be like. When I used to wonder what it must be like to have just a lot of positivity around you. And I don't know why it took me so long to realize that a lot of that negativity was actually coming from myself. And so much of it was internalized and so much of it was in my own mind. And so now I wonder what it must be like for myself and the voice in my head to be kind of kind and compassionate and to value me every day, all the time, just because I'm me and I'm not harming it or anything. And not with this kind of conditional, torturous state of only if and only when and only after and only for a few seconds, feeling as though I deserve things and have earned things and I'm doing well. So yes, that is my journey. What I'm doing for this is kind of, I think, so practically what I'm doing is identifying and catching myself out on how I think and what I say in my mind. For some things, I'm doing it very intentionally, so I'm actually writing things out for specific things which I know in my mind I am especially harsh on myself, and things that have an especially deep impact on my life and affect me in many different ways. I do try to keep a diary, which is very, very hard, but I do try to keep a diary of just the things I think about myself for something specific. And I just review it in the end of the week. And usually that in itself is shocking enough to think, oh my gosh, that's awful, that's terrible. And then in general, I do try to kind of validate my feelings a bit more during the week and to just be slightly kinder to myself. And honestly, it does so well. It works so well. I've already felt such a huge change. But I know that it is absolutely nothing, because still 99% of the time I'm the same. I'm really, really bad. But I think very slightly I'm kind of moving in that direction of kind of listening to myself more, being a bit kinder in general, and treating myself the way that I would, I want to say, treat someone that I hate. Let's start from there, and then work our way up. It's treating myself the way that I would treat someone that I hate is still better than the way that I would naturally treat myself. So I think I'm starting from there and working my way up, but it is a start for me, and hopefully I'll get to the point where I can treat myself as though I actually like myself one day. That's the dream. But yeah, that was a slight joke. It's potentially not that bad. But yeah, that's what I would recommend. If there's one aspect of your life that you're particularly insecure about, if it's something that you do, or some part of your work, or something that the way that you look, or the way that you behave around people, or the things that other people think about you, if there's any sort of internalized self-hate talk, I think it would be good to keep a diary of that and see how ridiculous it is and how unacceptable it actually is to speak to someone that way, even if that person is yourself. And I think that is the first step towards kind of implementing change in that direction and being a bit more generous and kind and compassionate and understanding and just human towards ourselves, which in the long term I think will lead to much better people, much happier people, and definitely much better parents, if that is something that you also want at some point. But yeah, that was my chit chat on self-parenting. I'll be continuing to read about self-parenting books and things like that, because it's definitely something that greatly fascinates me. I would love your thoughts, especially if you're a parent. I would absolutely love your thoughts if you're a parent, because I wonder if what the contrast would be. Does making a parent change the way that you speak to yourself? Do you realize that contrast even better once you have more things to kind of take care of? Because in this case for me, it's literally just myself. But once you have a child, do you realize that? Do you see that difference in the way that you talk to yourself and the way that you talk to your child? My mum always said that after she became a parent, so much about her changed. And actually I haven't had this conversation with her, so I think I'm going to try and do that. But I wonder if after you become a parent, some of that change does come from the same thing. So is it realizing that, oh, my self-talk is very different to the talk that I give my child, and the way that I control myself is very different to the way that I control or raise my child? And does that then change the way that you speak to yourself? So yeah, I would be very curious about that. But if you don't have a child, yeah, just like me, write those things down and see if you did have a child, do you think that would be acceptable? Do you think it would be acceptable for anyone to be treated in the way that you treat yourself and the way that you talk to yourself? Because in my case, it's a definite absolute no, but I'm curious as to what it is for other people. So yeah, that's a bit more of this thing potentially done. I haven't worked on this too well. I think it's the angle with the camera, because I have to have it this way rather than if I was actually painting, it would literally be here, which is in front of me, which makes this whole thing a lot harder. But I'm sure it'll be okay. We'll figure it out in the end. So yeah, that was my little rant on parenting and self-parenting. I would love to hear your thoughts on it. And yeah, as always, I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day. Thank you so much for spending this time with me. And yeah, be kind to yourself and others, and don't believe everything you think. Thanks. Bye.